the taste of a glass and a half. Cadbury Dairy Milk.
Excuse me, sir, how old were you when you made your first million?
What is this for?
We're trying to get advice from...
Back in the day, I owned both a Nintendo 64 and a PlayStation. And I know...
Cake eater.
Now, while I loved both, the N64 has always had a special place for me. And for while I loved both, the N... And I know...
Cake eater.
Now, while I loved both, the N64 has always had a special place for me, and for years I never thought much about why. Maybe it's because Mario 64 is still my favorite game of all time, and who knows, maybe I'm just a Nintendo fanboy. But for whatever reason, there were certain games I kept returning to, and I still feel the need to return to, even now. Games like Banjo-Kazooie, Wave Race, Ocarina of Time, and of course Mario 64. These are all games where I'm fairly certain I've seen everything they have to offer, but still, they keep pulling me back. And that's the part I've been trying to understand, because the PlayStation had no shortage of great games that I still love. But there's just something about certain Nintendo 64 games that feel different. So I started looking for the thing that kept pulling me back. Now I want to start by taking the obvious conclusions off the table. The N64's built-in multiplayer was a big part of what made it so memorable, but it was never the entire experience for me personally. I kept going back to games like Mario Kart and Star Fox, and it's true, they both had fun multiplayer, but I never became especially attached to other 4-player games like Mario Party, and while I played plenty of GoldenEye, there eventually came a point where I was just so much better than my friends that the matches stopped being much fun. It's just so much better than my friends that the matches stopped being much fun. The point is, multiplayer was a great feature of the Nintendo 64, but it didn't create the feeling I'm talking about, because most of the time, I was returning to these games alone. And I don't believe it's nostalgia either, because while it's true that I still enjoy playing these games today, I was already replaying them while the N64 was still current. And it wasn't because I had no other options. I owned a PlayStation, as I mentioned. There was always something else I could have been playing. And yet I still kept going back to certain N64 games. Now, sometimes we call that replay value, but that doesn't explain it either. Because of course these games were replayable, so were plenty of PlayStation games. Really, any well-designed game continues to be enjoyable over time. So there had to be something more specific, something that kept pulling me back even after the novelty was gone, even after there were no more surprises left. The first part of the answer came to me when I was shopping at the grocery store, because a question popped into my head. Why am I always the person who gets the cart with the stupid wheel that keeps pulling to one side? You know what I'm talking about? The one where the entire time you're not thinking about what you came to buy, you're thinking about what a pain in the rear it is to push this cart around. Well, have you noticed that video game controls are very much the same way? When they feel wrong, it's so distracting, you notice immediately. But when it feels right, you stop thinking about the controller entirely. Now, we often talk about immersion as something created by graphics. The more realistic a game looks, the easier it is to believe you're inside of it. But to me, immersion is more than just what you see. And the Nintendo 64 created a different kind of immersion. It created an immersion you could feel. That's why running around the courtyard of Peach's castle in Mario 64 feels so good before you even start the main game, or why it seems like you can sense the movement of the water beneath you in Wave Race, or even something as simple as banking the R-Wing back and forth in Star Fox. It's like you're not just playing a game. At the risk of sounding a little creepy, it's like you're feeling it. And at the risk of sounding a little creepy, it's like you're feeling it. At the risk of sounding a little creepy, it's like you're feeling it. And the reason is sitting right in the middle of the N64 controller, the analog stick. And yes, we often talk about how awkward that controller is.